Kia ora, good afternoon everybody. I hope you're going to get some lunch soon, but with that, happy to take any questions you've got.
What did you make of the reception, Prime Minister?
Look, it was typical of what we expect at Waitangi. I thought it was actually, again, very good, as expected really, and I really enjoyed it. And I think, for us to come here, and I think there's lots of different views expressed, as you'd always expect, and we would expect that. And I think, again, as I tried to say in my remarks, and I've said many times before, is that it's pretty unique and pretty special that we do this because, having lived and worked overseas for a long time and seen other countries, how they deal with their own internal identity issues and how they think about nationhood and statehood, we do it incredibly well. And this is a very challenging thing at times, but it's actually very important.
Can you explain your
thinking behind your speech and why you went down the paths that you did?
Yeah, well, it was sort of saying the relevancy of the treaty today has more relevancy for us today and going forward out to 2040 and beyond. And I wanted to be able to come back to the 3 articles of the treaty and actually express the articulation of our government and how we are working through the treaty with the policies that we have, whether it's around government, whether it's around partnership, and whether it's around citizenship. And so those are the things that I was trying to give a framework for how we're working through our policies and what we're trying to work together with Māori in order to improve better outcomes.
The tone was quite different to your first speech, and that your first one was quite it was about the ambition that you had for the country, and then today you're having to talk about the tough economic times. How challenging was it to kind of balance those two competing interests?
Not really. I mean, I think the key thing here is that Māori and non-Māori want the same things in New Zealand. Māori have been really badly impacted and have had a lot of pain and suffering as a result of the economic challenges we've been going through. They've been disproportionately victims of violent crime. They have been disproportionately not achieving as much as they can and want to with respect to education and healthcare outcomes. So our government is working very hard about that, and our conversations with the iwi chairs yesterday and the conversations I have with iwi up and down the country is about how we work together on those real things. And so we will always have differences of opinion about the treaty and our interpretation of it, but what we should be very united on is actually the delivery, because the way we work the treaty out is actually by lifting educational and health outcomes, by actually making the country safer, by making everybody wealthier. That's the work that we have ahead of us, and that doesn't change.
Prime Minister, you talked
good to see you, mate. The nice suit.
Thank you very much. You talked in your speech about how Māori in the past have been treated as unequals. Do you feel like they're being treated as equals today?
Well, it's ongoing work for all of us. It's we've got equal citizenship in this country, and we've got to continue to work at it. We don't arrive there. It's never perfect. It's the ongoing work of the last 186 years, and it'll be the ongoing work of the next 186 years. So, the point I was making was that what we want to see is an equality of opportunity, where 5-year-olds in this country, irrespective of their circumstances, irrespective of their ethnicity, irrespective of their backgrounds, get an equal shot at their version of the Kiwi dream, whatever that may be. And our government responsibility is to make sure we're putting in place those building blocks that are making it more equal and more of an equality of opportunity.
But when you think about some of the policies that you've brought in over the past few years, obviously the treaty principles bill.
Well, let's stop you there. We killed the treaty principles bill, and we ain't doing it again.
For the first reading, there were the Treaty of Waitangi clauses from legislation, which you're looking at removing. There were
sorry, Tom. I want to correct you because I want to be really clear. We're not removing Treaty of Waitangi clauses. What we're doing is making sure they are specific rather than generic and open-ended, so that there's not uncertainty in the system. All our legislation will continue to honour the Treaty of Waitangi. All of our legislation will continue to honour the treaty settlements. But to simplify it and say we're removing Treaty of Waitangi clauses, that's not the case. We're making sure that they are specific and purposeful and very focused.
So just to repeat, do you feel like, as a result of your government policies, that Māori are treated as equals today?
Well, that's the job of all of us in New Zealand, is to make sure that everybody in this country is treated equal. That's what the promise of Article 3 is, that there's equal citizenship for everybody in this country, irrespective of your background. And there is work to do, no doubt about it, as I said, to keep perfecting and to keep making an equality of opportunity.
What did you make of Te Pāti Māori's dirty laundry being aired?
Oh, look, I don't really comment on other parties. I'm here to try and make sure we advance New Zealand and New Zealand's interests. So.
You've talked about Te Pāti Māori many times, though.
No, I haven't. I try not to. They're their issues for them to sort through, and that's their internal politics and their internal organisational issues that they got to sort through. For me, I'm here trying to work with iwi leaders to make sure we advance New Zealand and improve outcomes for Māori.
What did you make of Iru Kapatangi's speech?
Well, again, the great thing about this place, unlike many other countries in the world, is that anybody gets to come here and express a different point of view, and we have to listen to that, and we should listen to each other and be respectful about that. And so, there were many different speeches today, as there always is, and we actually, it's good that people express their opinions.
And why do you think you got the most heckles when you were talking about Erica Stafford and NCEA results?
Well, actually, it's one of the things we talked about with the iwi chairs yesterday, is actually something we want to work much harder on, is actually improving educational outcomes for Māori. Because frankly, the number of Māori students and non-Māori students actually not attending school, not achieving with writing, not achieving with mathematics, is not setting them up for a great future. And we want to make sure our kids, Māori and non-Māori, in 20 years' time are accessing higher paying jobs, actually have more freedom, more choices because they're wealthier and they can do more things with their life. So that is the work of our government, and that is what we've been saying from day one, and that's what we're going to continue to do.
Impossible to ignore that it's election year this year. Do you think that you picked up any votes with your contribution today, or was that not an objective?
It was an objective for me. I'm here representing as Prime Minister of New Zealand to come here and listen, to hear the different perspectives that are articulated, to articulate our position as best as I can, to say that we are wanting to partner with Māori and iwi to improve outcomes for Māori, and we're working our way systematically through that. You can do a whole bunch of performative stuff, but actually you've got to get into the real work to actually deliver improved outcomes. And under successive governments, you have to say, how do we lift education outcomes? How are we going to lift health outcomes? How do we lift crime and safety outcomes across the country? And how do we lift economic
What are you
outcomes?
referring to when you say performative?
Sorry?
What are you referring to when you're talking about performative actions?
No, just inherent in your question, I was just trying to say to you that we are in the work of actually getting outcomes improved for Māori, and that's what Māori want as much as non-Māori. That's what everybody in this country wants.
You spoke about political scenes that we often see overseas, and you said that here in New Zealand we don't see fights out on the street, we actually debate issues on the marae. But do you have concern that the tension that we have seen perhaps in recent years could escalate to something more?
No, look, I speak to many leaders from different world countries. I spoke to many over summer actually, and they are all dealing with a different set of, everyone's dealing with some things that are similar and some things that are very different. And when I think about the treaty, I generally mean that the treaty is unique and has actually been, often we go 2 steps forward, 1 step backwards, but the arc of where we're trying to go with this country through the treaty is actually been about progress. And it's messy at times, and it's noisy, and we disagree, and that's okay. But that's a much better dynamic to have in a country than what I see and observe in other places, where there is deep polarisation, and ultimately it manifests itself in violence on streets, and that's not right.
Is your government honouring the treaty?
Sorry?
Is your government honouring
Yes.
the treaty? In what way?
Well, we take it very seriously. It's our obligation to honour the treaty, but we work it out by actually making sure we are lifting educational outcomes for Māori kids. We work it out by making sure we are lifting health outcomes. We work it out by making sure we're making a much more safer community.
You're removing
Sorry?
You're removing the treaty requirements from school boards. You're removing Te Reo Māori from things like phonics, which perhaps led to the Erica Stanford heckle during your speech. Why should people believe that you are saying you are honouring the treaty?
Because look at what we've achieved with our new entrants in the first 6 months at school, where we've doubled actually the achievement rates of Māori. That's exactly the work we've got to get into. That's the mechanical stuff that actually means that a young Māori kid in 20 years' time has a different future than what they have today, because they're able to get educated and able to access higher paying jobs, of which there are many out there in the world that we want to attract to this country. And I want everybody to be able to participate in that, because when you are wealthier, you actually have more choices and more opportunities as to how you get to live your life. And I want that for every kid, Māori or non-Māori.
Did you notice when you at the Pōwhiri that there was a protest trying to break the line? Did you notice that?
No.
To your right? You didn't at all?
Can I just mention, and sorry to labour the point that Tom was making again, but you did talk about equal rights being important. You said that after the First and the Second World War, that Māori didn't get equal rights.
Weren't always treated equally in our country, for sure.
And in 2026, are Māori being treated equally?
Yes, we are working hard to make sure that everybody in this country is being treated
Are
equally.
Māori
But
being treated
is it
equally?
perfect? No. And so we've got to continue to work at that. And that's why you see us work incredibly hard on things like Māori health outcomes, Māori educational outcomes, Māori being the victims of violent
Māori
crime.
aren't being treated equally, in what way?
No, I'm
are
not
Māori
saying that. I'm saying
So you think
we as
they
a
are,
government,
yes or no?
we
Are
are
they being
working.
treated
No, we are
equally?
working as a government. Well, it's an ongoing work for everybody in this country, irrespective of their
Ongoing
ethnicity,
work
irrespective of
means
their
it hasn't been
backgrounds.
achieved. So you're saying that Māori aren't at this stage entirely being treated equally? Is that what
No
you're saying?
country is perfect. We are all on a journey of actually making sure we are perfecting the countries that we are leading.
So in what
And there is
areas
more work
should-
for us to
In what
do.
areas should Māori rights be improved?
Well, I've said to you, we want an equality of opportunity. We've got more work to do to make sure that educational health outcomes, law and order outcomes, economic opportunities are created for Māori and non-Māori. irrespective of where you've come from in life. There are people who, and so that's the work that we've got.
So can you just say the words, Māori aren't being treated equally?
Well, no, I'm not saying that because
Why
I think,
not?
we are working as a government to make sure that there is
Why
equality of
it difficult
citizenship
for you
in
as
this
a Prime
country.
Minister to say that?
Sorry?
Why is it difficult for you as Prime Minister to say the words that Māori aren't being treated equally?
I've said to you there is more work to do because it is an ongoing piece of work that every government, and in 20 years' time and in 50 years' time, it'll still be ongoing work to perfect. There is more work to perfect our country and to make sure there's equal citizenship for all.
Do you think it could be confusing for people out there to understand the future of the ideas underpinning the likes of the Treaty Principles Bill when, you're saying, we're not having a bar of it going forward, that's not what we're about, and yet we hear David Seymour saying, the voting down of the TPB was a Pyrrhic victory and it's, he hasn't heard of a better idea. Do you think that can be a bit confusing for people who are asking the question, well, if both sides aren't backing down, where is this going to go in terms of a future coalition?
Look, I mean, all I can say is that in an MMP environment, the New Zealand people vote for the parties that they select. We are then tasked with the task of forming a government to give stable government to New Zealanders. What I'm saying as a leader of the National Party is that we have got no more time for treaty principles bills. That is not happening. And so when I hear, David can have his own take on that, but I'm just telling you, it ain't happening.
I guess the basis of the question is how guaranteed, how ironclad can that guarantee be if it all comes down to coalition negotiations at the end of the day, and if ACT don't relent on it, then where do we go?
We've been there and we killed it, and so we're done.
Have you been briefed on the Moa Point sewage debacle?
Yeah, a little bit. I was just, I'm aware that it's a major issue. I know also that Simon Watts, I think, has asked for more. Simon's asked for more briefing on it, so he can talk to it as well.
Can we just ask, what do you think about Winston Peters' speech in there, just before we move on to other things?
Look, again, guys, everyone shows up and they can get to say whatever they want and they can express themselves uniquely as they are and their own points of view, and that's exactly what this is all about, because isn't this better to be doing it this way than it is to be having violence in our streets and people in conflict with each other? And I think this is a much better way. So let people say what they want to say, and that's okay.
He was clearly trying to incite some strong reactions, though. Is that acceptable?
Well, I think there are people from all sides in the debate today that had strong views, quite rightly so, and I encourage those views. And we want to see that diversity of thought that's actually out there. That's important.
Were there any key messages that were given to you today by the people who spoke that you most want to take into this year and election year?
No, it's just the ongoing work of making sure we're understanding each other and that we can find the common ground where we can agree on 70% of stuff and then move forward. And that's what we want. Is we've done a lot of talking in this country, but we've actually got to lift the performance of this country as well. And so, in our conversations right from day one with many of our national ministers and iwi leaders, it's always been about that. It's always been about, right, let's find the 70% we can agree on. Okay, what are we going to do to lift educational outcomes for Māori? Okay, what does that mean in terms of attendance? What does it mean in terms of numeracy and literacy? Let's make sure we do that. So, that's just the ongoing work, and to make sure that we keep in communication, that we keep working together to get improved outcomes for everyone.
Do you think you can be more colourblind, as one of the messages was? Can you be more colourblind?
Well, you've seen us reach out, across party lines as much as we can on, we tried to reach out on, public-private partnerships. We tried to reach out on educational reforms. We're going to continue to do that. You've seen us actually recently, modern slavery has been something important to me. You've seen us actually as National and Labour come together to say let's find a way through that to actually deliver modern slavery legislation, which will be good, and we'll continue to do that.
Prime Minister, Pacific unemployment has more than doubled since your government came. Has your government failed Pacific people essentially?
Well, again, what's failed Pacific people is a previous government that didn't run the economy very well. It caused a huge amount of pain and suffering, that tripled the debt, that ran up huge amounts of taxes and increased a lot of wasteful spending. And so as I've talked before, we've got on top of the spending, we've got inflation down, we've got interest rates down, we've got the economy now growing, and the last thing that gets sorted is unemployment. And so I know, Louise has been working incredibly hard to make sure that people are well positioned to take jobs now and also future jobs that will come on stream as they grow. So there's more work for us to do, and of course we want to see lower unemployment. That is what we expect to see as the economy continues to grow through the rest of the year.
So what's your party's position on former MP Arthur and I's petition for visa-free travel for Pacific nationals?
Look, as you know, we've made a number of changes to visas over the last 2 years. years to make it more seamless, much more easier. We'll look at that in due course, but I don't have a strong position on that at the moment.
Prime Minister, can we go back
John,
to...
good to see you.
Nice to see you, Prime Minister.
Well,
And
suited and booted in your tie.
touch, 2 minutes, I think, to use a rugby analogy. Prime Minister, to use Irukapu Kingi's phrase about this government stabbing Māori in the front, this is Toitu Te Tiriti organising, right? 80,000 people marched on Pānga in the movement he organised. And I think there's probably a significant number of young people in the north who feel that way. What do you say to them?
Well, that's what we're working incredibly hard to do, is to make sure that those young people here actually see a future here in New Zealand, and they can participate in it, and that they actually get involved in the political process as well and help contribute to it. Because, I appreciate, we want them to be participating in the political process. That's great. But actually, what's the best thing that we can do for young people in the north? When we've had the same conversation over and over and over for the last 50 years under successive governments of different colours, have we actually achieved results and outcomes for them? And the short answer is no, not enough. And so that's why we've got to set them up much better with better education, better health outcomes, a much safer community, and more economic opportunity for everybody and for them. And so, that's the work of this government. And I appreciate it might sound quite, pragmatic, or practical, but it is practical because we can keep talking about ideas, but you've actually got to make sure that there is economic opportunity here in the north for people to find great jobs and to get high-paying jobs. You've got to make sure that they feel safe in their homes, their businesses, their communities, that they want to raise a family here. They know that their kids are going to get a great education that's going to be competitive with kids in Singapore and Ireland and Australia and other places, so they can access those higher-paying jobs that are out there that we're desperate to get here into the north as well.